Hi, I'm Radian, and this is a video showing the custom CE table I have for stat reading and data gathering. First thing you're going to want to do is have the game started up. You pretty much must have Crack Shield running, otherwise Mabinogi will kill itself as soon as it realizes CE is trying to attach to it. So make sure you have Crack Shield set up and running, make sure the game is running, be logged in and all that jazz. Then you're going to want to open CE, and you need to do two things. The first thing you need to do is select a process to open, the glowing button in the upper left, and choose client.exe. That's the Mabinogi client. It's offering to load client.ct because I have it set in the My Cheat Tables folder, My Documents folder, which is where Cheat Engine is if you have it installed. If you don't have that set up, then you can just open the table with File, Load Table, or whatever. It's going to load this. Alright, so most things here are either categories or injections. The first section here is camera scripts. This includes things like draw distances and things I use to view things you can't normally see. For example, Mabinogi's draw distance has an upper limit. You can see everything's foggy out there. However, if I check huge draw distance, you can see here it greatly increases the draw distance, increases it far beyond what is needed to see across the entire map at the same time. Same thing down here, draw distance indoors, because there's two kinds of fog that the game uses. One is for quote-unquote outdoors, one is for quote-unquote indoors. I say it like that because Mabinogi is inconsistent as hell as to what is actually outdoors and indoors once you start getting into things like the Skithach Caverns and, Alban Night training grounds and all that jazz. So if we uncheck this, you'll notice the draw distance is still huge. If you have any sort of graphical mods or any graphical settings set and you want to reset them, just go into the options screen. It's because Mabinogi restarts the renderer every time the options screen is opened or closed, so it'll undo any of the graphics mods if they happen to be hanging around. Alright, so enable FSAA is a copy of what's in Abyss. Some of the things in here are copies of what's in Abyss or different versions of what Abyss has, because I have them here so that they can be used when Abyss is broken, and they can be toggleable without the right-click menu, so I can toggle them without the rendering pausing. So you can see the rendering pauses here, and also be able to toggle them with hotkeys and all that jazz. So that's just the same thing that's in Abyss. This is the FOV mod. When you check this, you'll notice it gives you something here that you can edit. The default FOV for Mabinogi is a value of 180, and this produces a rather flat sort of screen. I don't really like the way they did this, and a lot of other people don't as well, because the game doesn't look really 3D. The game looks kind of flat, like some sort of storyboard thing. So if you were to double-click this value, you could change it. Some people like an FOV of 120, which zooms out a little bit and makes the world look a bit more 3D. Some people like their FOV at 90, especially if they're FPS players, because this makes things a lot more 3D. You can tell that there's a lot more depth going on when the camera is rotated now, and it actually looks like, an actual three-dimensional environment and not a flat storyboard background for your character. Of course, you could go crazy and, make the FOV 50 and stuff like that. Mabinogi handles FOV very strangely, believe me. If you have it set to something and you uncheck it, it'll set it back. So no worries there. This is one I did today in response to a request in the Mabimods forum. Things never fade out. I'm bad at naming things, if you can't tell. This makes it so that NPCs and objects and things like that don't become invisible when they're blocking your view, like this tree and all that jazz. Not very useful in my opinion, but some people like it, and it can be nice to get screenshots of, like, say, a giant character with a lance or something like that, and you want to get a nice screenshot, but they keep fading out anytime you get near them because their hitbox is so big, because they're giants wielding a lance. Alright, so anyways, these next two things aren't specifically Mabinogi mods, they're just short scripts for CE's D3D hook functions. Wireframe mode. This can be useful for seeing things that Mabinogi normally has hidden, or for having the user interface in wireframe mode. Then there's disable Z-buffer, which is mainly used for looking around things. It really messes with Mabinogi's rendering. Oh, especially at night. Alright, let's see. So the other section is generally mods that aren't related to graphical things. Again, this is some stuff that's in Abyss, like the monotoggle map delagger, allow changes to current channel, but there's some custom things like don't force interface on for fighter. If you use fighter skills and you've ever tried to keep your interface hidden like this, you'll notice that every time you use a fighter skill and the chain UI pops up in the center, it forces your interface back on, which can be annoying to people trying to record videos, so hopefully this will keep the interface from popping back on with fighter. Alright, now there's two mods here related to the devcat title. This is just for testing, you can ignore this one. What you want generally is force devcat title read. And what that does is it modifies the title loading code for entities to make it so that your client thinks that you and everybody else has the devcat title on. This has some interesting effects. For example, let's check it on, and if we hold Alt, we see something above our name. This is our HP. As you can see here, it shows the current out of max. But if you're looking, I'm not sure if the video quality is good enough, it says 294 out of 286. That's because there is a Mabinogi bug related to relogging due to the way talent bonuses are calculated. Your max HP can stay the same, but your current HP can regenerate above your max HP up to a certain threshold. And yes, HP and stuff like that can have decimal points. It also shows it for NPCs, so you can see Alyssa here has 1000 HP. Nora there has 1000 HP, that's just standard for NPCs, but you can use this to see exact HP on mobs. Now if you right-click items, you'll notice there's a copy class ID to clipboard button, which you may have seen in certain videos. Sometimes Sabina will release a video and she'll have forgotten to change titles, so you'll see this. But otherwise, if you hover at items under the item attributes, which I can't mouse over because the thing will go away, but under item attributes you can see some dev information such as the class ID and certain flags. There's various other client-side settings here. I can't remember all of them because I mainly use this for HP and certain information viewing. Let's see. Always collect mode is useful for those of you training Transformation Mastery. If we were to bring up the Transformation Diary, you have to have collect mode on in order to see with Alt whether you can trans into something or not, or whether you have finished collecting it, or whether you still need it or not. However, the collect mode button is disabled every time you relog or every time you change channels. So if you're doing something like changing channels to get the daily in a shadow mission, and you'll be like, oh crap, let me go turn collect mode on over and over. Always collect mode makes it so the game thinks the button's always held. However, it only works for things that you freshly walk into. For example, I've got the mod on, but Alyssa's not showing it. Well, you've got to go outside of rendering distance, so they disappear. Then when you come back in, it thinks that the button is on. So generally just turn this on, and then no matter how much you change channels or anything, it'll think that collect mode is on. Uncap auto production limit is a copy of what was previously in Mod Sharker. I'm not sure who made it. It's probably Step 29 or Plone Cakes. I found that it still works currently. If you use any sort of production skills and you want to make things in bulk, you might be annoyed that it limits you to making 20 at a time, even if you can fit more materials. If you check this, then you'll be able to shove more materials into the thing. The auto add button will still only add up to enough for 20, but you can shove more materials into the creation interface and make more than 20 at a time. Useful for things like Hillwind Engineering, making the nuts and bolts and all that jazz, and Shylane are wow, I can't even think of the skill names now. Magic Craft for making the purified rabbit's feet and things like that for training. Right, this section here, debug master code and all of these debug codes, all of the information for this was given by Step. Step didn't specifically make these scripts exactly, but he gave me the information to make them, so all credit goes to him. This turns on and enables some of Mabinogi's built-in debugging functions, like its built-in wireframe mode, which is separate. Mabinogi's built-in wireframe mode does not wireframe the user interface. It shows the skybox below the sky, and there's some things that Mabinogi's wireframe debug stuff doesn't show, so that's why I've got the other one in here still. But anyway, so this can be useful for seeing what things are while still having your UI. Let's see. Render bound hitboxes can be used to see some additional data on like mouse over versus clickable areas and things like that. Let's see. Render collision shows the collision boxes for things. So you can see here's the collision boxes on the left and right to prevent me from going off of the bridge into the water here, because Mabinogi's Mabinogi's a 2D game. Those of you that may have seen the thread, Mabinogi's actually a 2D game, so they have to have these collision boxes around to give a sense of dimensions. Some of the things here aren't very useful. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory, like master FPS. I feel like pointing out that's just an FPS and rendering data display. Anyway, so that's it for the custom patches. Onto the actual data gathering. So all of these things are for data gathering. Find camera base displays camera information, like the target X, Z, and Y, which is what the camera is focusing on, the camera's position itself, camera status, which is whether you're outdoors, indoors, or whether the camera is moving or not, and the draw distance. Again, the camera scripts has a huge draw distance scripts, but this is here, again, as a readout and custom modifiable value. There's some duplication here just because I do different things with the different sets of data and the different entries. Then there's like your character position, which is slightly separate from the camera target position. Alright, so find zoom base is the first thing where you have to do something. You'll notice right here after you check it, it says zoom in or out once, and the values aren't here. Well, you just go in the game and just zoom in or out once. Just, scroll with your mouse wheel. And then the values are here. Shows the minimum zoom and the maximum zoom for your currently loaded settings and area and your current zoom. This is so, for example, if I wanted to modify the maximum zoom on the fly, I could do that, and then scroll out and scroll out and scroll out, and then turn on the huge draw distance. And if I wanted to scroll out, well, this is annoying to scroll out all this, so I can just edit it here. Just type it in, and there we go, zoomed all the way out. So this is how you can get way zoomed out shots of the map. Let's turn that off, turn this off, and then, like I said before, to reset the graphical settings, just open the options screen. Boop. There we go. Alright. So under find zoom base, there's find player base, and this is the biggest one. So it says open your character screen once, because the values won't be there, because it hooks some code that reads stats in your character screen. So as long as your character screen's been opened once after this thing has been checked, there you go. There's all the data. Race, skin color, height, sorts of visual data. Then there's your stats. So you can see your stats do have decimal points, and you can sit here and watch your stamina. Something to note here is this has your CP, and this is a more accurate description or depiction of your CP than there is on your character, because your character's CP is added onto their name, so it's only modified when the name is regenerated. So for example, if you were to put CP clothing on or off, this won't change. Those of you that deal with CP modifying clothing, you might know that this doesn't change, but this will change because this is basically a live update of your stats. Updates as fast as cheat engine's update interval is here in the main settings, 500 milliseconds, so half a second. So you can see all sorts of your stats here. Some of them are color-coded for convenience. Generally, the lower you get in the stats, the less sure I am of where that is, and a lot of this is copied from Aura. I asked them for help, and then it's like, hey, they're open source. I can just look at the scripts. So there's the some stuff that I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's like some of the stuff here, like I'm pretty sure I know what it is, like the exploration level and stuff like this. Let's see. The toxic stats, that is actually potion poisoning. So for example, again, this is just editing client side. This is not an actual cheat or anything like that. Let's say toxic strength, if I were to make it to negative 100, there we go. My strength went down from 136 to 36 because it's as if I had negative 100 strength from potion poisoning. Of course, could make that like 5,000 and make it look like I've got 5,000 strength, but this won't actually take effect. If I were to go attack an enemy, then it would do damage calculation as if my stats were unmodified, because the server knows what my actual stats are. So you can try and modify these values, but you're not really going to get anywhere, and it can be mainly useful if you just want to read your stats. So that's why I'm referring to it as, a stat reader and data gatherer. Anyways, on to the next section, find item base. People will probably find this more useful. Oops, wrong thing. So check this. Now, in order to target a specific item, you need to pick it up. This is because this targets the code that modifies an item's coordinates in an inventory, which happens when it moves between different inventories. For example, each of the character's equipment slots is a separate inventory tab that only holds one item. You've got your basic tab, your me tab, your VIP tab, and also your mouse cursor is an inventory tab. It's inventory ID 1. So none of this data is filled out. Let me go pick up this item. There. Alright, I can just put it back down. As long as because this holds the data of the last thing that was moved in your inventory. So as you see here, inventory ID is 5, that's the body slot. If I were to move this over here to your basic tab, it's inventory ID 2, which is your basic tab. So you can figure out which inventory IDs are which by doing this. Of course, holding it on your mouse cursor is inventory ID 1. So let's put that back. Alright, so there's some other things here, item ID, such as the class ID, like if you want to look it up in the item database or anything like that of the game, or any of the online item databases. There's the 3 color codes here, along with the, optional hex code there for flashy or non-flashy. Certain things in the item structure only apply to certain types of items, like amount is for stackable items. X and Y is where it is actually in the inventory. So for example, if I put it there, X and Y showing up as 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3. Yep, there's the upper left bit of it there. That's the origin of an item, the upper left. State is for hood, aura level is for ego weapons, hit count is for weapons. Here's some flags here that nobody's entirely sure what all of them do. Some of this info is copied right from Aura, because they've done a lot more on this than me, and they're friendly and willing to share info, and they've got their open source. So anyways, true durability, you can see here various stats and things. You can see the effective range on those, which I think is pretty neat, that it's an actual item property. Attack speed is a single byte, and there's preset speeds. I think there's like a total of 6 values from fastest to slowest or something like that. Knock count, I'm not entirely sure what the game's doing with that data anymore. Proficiency percent and proficiency main. So see here, 57.5 is 575. Some of the numbers in Nabi are held in kind of strange configurations, as you may see if you go look around. Alright, so player flags you can just pretty much completely ignore. This is testing stuff that I never got very far with. I can't really figure out what this structure is used for. I've got some guesses here, but none of it's really correct. So in general, you can ignore this unless you need to, for some reason, lock your character's controls or mess with control locks, because some of that's here. Cooking info will, if you have the cooking interface up and you start adding ingredients and stuff, it will display the percent of the ingredients, so you can keep track exactly. You notice that these are byte values instead of float. That's because they are actually very large byte values. So that's about it. Just download the table, get Cheat Engine installed, make sure you have Crack Shield running, and you can sit there and poke around with the game. This is what I use to look at the player stats. This is my own personal table. I use it to look at parts of the game by modifying the camera and things like that. Certain things can be modified client-side, certain things are more annoying than others. But there you go, there's a brief rundown of what's currently in it. Stuff changes as the game updates and things break, or something new I discover comes in and all that jazz. Anyways, there you go, have fun.